Hi everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. I want to start by saying just two words to you, and those are Timofey Shadura. That's the name of the hero that got executed by the Russians. He's one of the many heroes that did not need to die, but he did. And he did only because of Russia. Let's remember that. And today I want to start by going over the map very, very quickly because we have many news to cover, but let's get over the areas. So on the north side, we hear about additional activity on the Kremina area here in the north. This is because Russians, they see that they are struggling around Bakhmut. So what they're trying to do, they're basically seeing that Ukraine is trying to send additional reinforcements, additional brigades to reinforce the position around Bakhmut because of their decision to hold it. So instead, Russia said, oh, okay, if you're Bakhmut, we need to kind of get pressure off Bakhmut. So we need to have some forces maybe distract you around Kremina. And that's why we're hearing that there are now additional reinforcements arriving to Kremina, but we'll see if they will be able to achieve anything. But just something for us to know. Before I get to Bakhmut, because it's going to be a long talk about it, we hear, and the latest news are that Russians were able to essentially get to the village of Vesele and move just a little bit closer to Avdiivka. Again, so far, nothing to worry about. This is just a slow advancement of the Russians. Ukraine still have strong positions in this area, so I'm monitoring the situation, but this is pretty far from being critical. There are very strong defensive lines in the area, but just something to be aware of. And additionally, we all thought that Vuhledar saga has pretty much more or less concluded, but it's not. They're continuing doing the same thing, and it's basically Groundhog Day there once again, because I actually, like, some of these images were starting to blur for me. So now they finally starting adding some of the, date and time when they're showing these images. So now at least I know if I'm watching a fresh image or not. So same thing in Vuhledar, another couple of tanks destroyed, another couple of BMPs with orcs on them. So that's the situation on the map, just to kind of cover it very, very quickly. And now we go to the main part, the Bakhmut area. And here I have plenty of things to talk about. So let me just get my trusty thing. So we know that Ukrainians right now, they basically have issues at Bakhmut. Ukrainians have completely fallen back from the east side to the west side. Oh, I should use probably the blue one. And Russians are now controlling the east side at all. So now basically river is divided. Well, a river, it's more of a stream, maxi stream, that is dividing Bakhmut in two. And Ukrainians are now on the west side. West side is a lot more fortifiable and controllable than the east side, because east side is mostly like it's not a high-rise building. It's mostly like private houses here, or maybe two-story buildings and whatnot. We've seen some videos from Priogozin, and it was around the tank area, and tank area is this one here. That's the crossing on the main road, and the tank monument is right over here. So that's where it's taken. So Bakhmut right now is basically split, but we need to understand that both sides are not equal. This side where Ukrainians are, which is the high density, high rise building, is significantly more defendable than the private house area, which was actually quite heavily shelled, and it's not as. So right now, Ukraine, to be honest, is still in a strong position inside of city. Now, outside of city, as far as we've heard, basically Ukrainians are now doing a very interesting kind of, how do you say, like a movement pattern. Oh, sorry, jumped somewhere. So Ukrainians are doing interesting movement pattern. They are trying to take certain road one way, and then because on this road to Ivanivsky bridge here was destroyed, So they are kind of going the other way around because they cannot take this part of the road here because it's being shot by the Russians. So they kind of go to Chromove, then they go here, and then they kind of go around this, and then they use this road to go further. It's not ideal because a lot of these roads right now are turned to mud, and this is causing problems. Firstly, this is causing problems for supplies, and this is causing problems for Ukrainians because of the... Oh, sorry, I need to move. It's causing problems for supply, and it's causing problems for medical personnel to evacuate the wounded people, and they have now been moved to the trucked, to trucked vehicles. But it's not ideal. They're slower, and still people are reporting that these roads are being essentially under fire control of the Russians. So there are reports of vehicles being destroyed. Now let's talk about the important part about Bakhmut. Should or should not Ukrainians pull out? Because it seems that we've got our answer, but I'm going to be careful here. Zelensky came out. Last time we were discussing the map, I was saying that now we have special forces inside of city of Bakhmut. That is accurate. We know that Zelensky had a conversation with Zaluzhny and Syrsky, and they came out, well, Zelensky came out with a message saying that both Zaluzhny and Syrsky are supporting the idea of Ukrainian troops to get out of Bakhmut. And here I want to tackle a lot of the analysts that are essentially yelling about the situation around Bakhmut. There is a lot of analysts that are saying that this is a purely political move, and that Ukraine just needs to get out of Bakhmut. Their arguments are that the roads are turned to mud, so supplies are pretty bad right now, especially because it's a mud season. That traveling through these roads, now that they're under fire control, is kind of dangerous, so Ukraine is attritioning. Being in a pocket itself is kind of bad because Ukraine is being shot at pretty much every angle. And more importantly, it's a very, very tough position to be in. So maybe it makes sense to move back to some other positions and then maybe restart the operation. So that's the idea, right? But what these analysts are saying, and I'm going to retort to them, is that they do not have the full vision of the plan. They do not know the plan of General Zaluzhny. They do not know the plan of General Syrsky or the General Staff. They do not see the full picture. They do not understand what's the situation with the forces Ukraine is having. They don't have the full understanding of the forces that Russia is having, right? They don't have the full overview of information. So there can be multiple factors at work here. Firstly, one that is kind of missed a lot of is that right now Russians are trying to storm. They are trying to advance from mostly like north side. That's where especially Wagner's are. And they are doing very, like they're very well equipped, and they're very hard to fight against. But the thing is that who is advancing right now? This is not prisoners. These are the core Wagner parts. These are especially the elite of the storm units. So all the combat veterans that were fighting for Wagner's and so on. So they are using their most qualified forces to attack here. So potentially it's worth it that for Ukrainians, if they have a favorable ratio of attrition for Russians. I know this sounds kind of cynical, but that's how war is. It's about calculation, how much you're losing compared to how much enemy is losing. And if Ukrainians are seeing that Russians right now are losing a lot of really elite forces that they cannot use more, that's potentially worth it. Because a lot of the warriors in the front lines, they have been telling for many months that Mobiks themselves, not really a big challenge for them. They don't know how to fight. They don't know what it is. It's always the problem when the Mobiks are supplemented by the elite forces, because Mobiks, they do just essentially the dirty work, and then the elites come and do the real damage. So if there is less elites, then the capability multiplication just scales so much more significantly down if there is just no elites. Moreover, we're seeing that even elite Russian troops, like not Wagnerites, they don't really want to advance that well. So potentially, if Wagner forces are reduced, then there will not be anything essentially to attack anymore, period. That is a very interesting idea. Moreover, we also heard, like when we heard about the units being pulled out of Bakhmut, now we hear additional information. Now we understand what actually happened. What happened is essentially rotation. So units rotated in and out. So some units left Bakhmut and new fresh units came into Bakhmut. And these units have actually counterattacked somewhat. And this is basically the news that I said I got from my source on the ground, and I just didn't want to spread, but then it was spread anyway. So I was like, okay, now fine, I don't need to tell you. But yes, basically units came in, they were able to counterattack them, and they were able to somewhat stabilize the situation. Right now, the situation at the north is very tough. Russians are still attacking, but Ukrainians were able to little by little but stabilize the situation just a little bit. It's not fully stable yet. It's still very dangerous. The initiative is still on the Russian side. There's plenty of Wagnerites to kill, but it's better. And more importantly, the situation is slowly but surely improving on the south side. I am hearing news that while at the south side, Russians still trying to attack, it's actually more of a both ways attacks. So Russians are attacking, but also Ukrainians are counterattacking, and counterattacking actually better than Russians. So there is mutual pushback. So if Ukrainians will be able, for example, to push south back and, retake Klishivka, for example, like this, clear the hills over here, and then essentially rebuild this defense line over here, then whatever the Russians achieved at the north is going to be dangerous, yes, but if Ukrainians will get this road, well, good for them. That's going to make Bakhmut basically whatever Russians did for the past couple of months completely useless. That is good. Then additionally, as I said, we don't know all of the situation on the battlefield. We don't know, for example, if Ukrainians are having some kind of plan. Maybe they need to keep the architecture of the battlefield as it is right now, because right now we know where Russia is dedicating forces. If potentially Bakhmut is taken and Russia starts, refreshing their forces, preparing them for the Ukrainian counteroffensive, then Ukrainian counteroffensive might stumble upon a more prepared Russian forces. Whereas right now, they're basically in this trap that they need to attack if they want to achieve anything, because they still haven't achieved it. So a lot of things that needs to be still done about Bakhmut. And I said it's going to be quick, but apparently it's not. Let's go over the news. Thank you so much for watching this map update. I will continue on. Click subscribe and like and whatnot, yada yada. Let's go. All right, continuing very quickly. There was a video by Priogozin came out where he basically stated that, well, there is 150 million people in Russia, and apparently New York Times posted an article saying that this is a last attempt and last chance for Priogozin because he's becoming irrelevant. And he's saying, oh, there's 150 million people in Russia, so if half of them wants to essentially support the war, so they can become Wagnerites, so Wagner can have 70 million people army. It's such a stupid shit. And basically he's saying that actually there is actually another Russian army that's been hiding all along, and they're just waiting for Wagner to finish their job with Bakhmut, and then as soon as the Bakhmut is taken, then, as he says, the operational area opens up, and then all these hundreds of thousands of fresh forces that are having the top new equipment, fully equipped with a lot of ammunition, are gonna pour into Ukraine. Like complete nonsense. Because like what I've been doing like for the past 6 months, like chilling, playing poker, and also like from doing nothing, I was like, let's go. Also send a couple of death squads to Vuhledar, lose couple of like hundreds of equipment there. Yeah, it's fine. So it's a complete joke. There is no Russian army that is waiting. Is there a lot of meat like mobilized? Yes. Yes. Is it like well prepared elite forces that just gonna flow through? No, obviously not. Taking of Bakhmut is not breakthrough through the lines. There is no operational area. What is around Bakhmut is just more hills and more defensive positions. That's what's waiting them, even if they get to take Bakhmut, which is actually not given with the dedication that Ukrainians are giving. So it's a nice speech, but remember, Prigozhin right now is desperate because he's becoming irrelevant, he's becoming completely dismissed, and even prisoners is being taken from there. Because the second news that I want to talk about is how Russia are treating the prisoner approach, how they're getting prisoners. So right now, prisoners are being hired by the Russian Ministry of Defense, and the Ministry of Defense basically saying like this: they're going around prisons and they're saying, okay, sign this contract, then you get a pardon, and then you get into our custody, and basically we're going to train you, and yeah, you're going to go and fight. And they basically take these guys, they take them to the front lines. Then they said, well, actually, we're not going to train you. We're going to have like a day's training, which is training nominally. And then in a day's training says, okay, here is your stuff. Now you're going to go storm this way. And the guys that say, okay, we're not going to storm, they have a clause in the document that they sign saying that they are saying that they will not resist, and they will continue essentially being like in this penalizing system. So if essentially they don't follow orders, that is means that they essentially rioting. They are not following the code of the penal colony. So imagine prison. So in a sense of like, oh, they're resisting the prison systems. So in that case, they take those prisoners, they bring them to the camps like of gray prisons that supposedly don't exist in Donbass area, and they put them in cages, and then like it's a gray area, you know. No one knows what can happen there, and we all can imagine that what's happening. So essentially, all these prisoners right now are being volunteers. They're being sent, but if they stop being volunteers, then they're getting a little bit influenced, and then they're essentially either being executed or sent away because they signed off their lives, and they just can always say, oh, this guy resisted the order that we were supposed to be giving him, so we had to enforce him, but he resisted more, so we shot him. That's it. All clean. Good job, Russia. All right, we have no time for any other news. It's crazy. I guess I will make it part of the next video. But I want to finish today, obviously, by talking about Sakartvelo and people of Sakartvelo, or as you might know it better, Georgia. Sakartvelo is actual name of the country. And Georgians right now are having a big dilemma. When European Union offered for countries to join, to allow ability to join, they said that Georgian people were still undecided. So they needed to see more dedication from Georgian people. And this is because of the backsliding that Georgia was experiencing with having more pro-Russian government in charge, and basically forgetting that Russia invaded and took over their land, which is, for me, is crazy. But I'm not Georgian. I don't know how people in Georgia feel. But what I want you to understand, people of Georgia, is that now is the time. Right now, the regime that you're having is basically started transformation. They want to stop being democracy. Like, they've actively stated that they are going to reduce your right, and it's clear that they want to align with Russia, essentially. Their action, it's not just about the bill that they passed. And for the people that don't know, they essentially copied the Russian bill of marking someone as a foreign agent. I believe if it's 20% of funding that goes from the sources outside of Georgia in this case, then this party needs to declare itself that it's a foreign agent and it should go into register into foreign agency. This is the same pattern that Russia was on, slowly introducing all of these awful, atrocious dictatorship laws. And this is the same path that apparently Georgian government wants to go. They are looking to essentially turn back time, and they want Georgia essentially to fall back. I want you to just to know that any inactivity right now is just going to cost you 2 or 3 times more later on. And if you're just not going to act at all, then you're just going to become like Belarus. There's going to be a power in place that will use anything, any power possible. It will kill anyone, torture anyone at once, and you will be able to do nothing. At some point, you will wake up in a prison cell. Maybe it's going to be a gilded cage. It's still going to be a country, but it's going to be a country that's tied to dictatorship like Russia. And at some point, Russia will absorb it. It's just going to be absorbed. Obviously, we're all hoping that Russian regime will fall, but it's still not given. So I would advise you to be very, very careful. And if you can do some kind of action right now, do it. Do it. It is time. You cannot wait and expect someone else to do it later. This is the time. And please know that Ukrainians have went through this as well. Freedom is never free. You need to fight for it, and you need to keep fighting, because that's how things work. All my love goes to the people of Georgia. Dideba Sakartvelo. I love you all, guys. Slava Ukraini, and I'll see you guys next time.